Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How you doing there, Steve?
Hi everyone, I'm doing fine, thank you very much. Glad we're past the solstice here and the days are getting longer.
Or in the Northern Hemisphere, they're getting shorter. Poor them, huh?
Yeah, poor them, absolutely. Summer's on the way, people. Southern Hemisphere.
Absolutely. So don't forget our website, www.fistchat.com. You can find all of our links there to previous episodes. Subscribe to our lists on iTunes, RSS, MP3s, and you can also interact with us on Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. Today, we'll just rip into it, and it's almost like some sort of science fiction movie. It's Mother Nature strikes back almost in this sort of scenario that we're talking about. But we sort of came across a story not just in this past week about two economists who were saying that essentially the world cannot keep growing at the rate that it is and continue going forward in the way that it is, because we're living in a finite world with finite resources. And some of what they had to say was it was just a whole new sort of look at the whole climate change debate, the way the environmental side of things. What did you get out of it, Steve?
Well, I like the way it's changed the debate and it's shifted the debate. Look, if anyone out there doesn't believe in climate change, you're welcome to not believe in it. But what I would like to know is where we're going to get our energy from for the future at any rate. There's 2 billion people in Asia. Okay, now, 300 million Americans, 20 million Australians. Add them together, that's 320 million trying to compete for fuel against 2 billion. Just do the math. There's not enough energy to go around. If we continue to grow and expand and expect our economies to grow and expand in the way that they have, we've been very lucky for the last 50 years that we've got energy so cheap. It's no longer going to be the way. And whatever your thought on climate change, you better start looking at alternative forms of energy.
This is probably something we can revisit at the end too, but this idea that these guys brought up was that it's almost like we have to stay in this state of denial until we get this oh my God moment, and then we have to do something, otherwise, because it's just so blatantly obvious that there's no other option. Because in the current climate, obviously it's different in every country, but in Australia, we're in the middle of a rather nasty sort of debate at the moment on all these sorts of issues, and essentially, a lot of it comes down to people wanting to keep things the way they are versus people who, I guess, maybe they're recognizing that something needs to be done, and then going further, people are under the guise of wanting to change things, are pushing their own more radical agenda into the debate. And it's kind of sort of hard to see the forest from the trees with a lot of this stuff, because no wonder people are confused out there about what's going on.
Well, where are they confused? We've got a population of 6 billion on the planet at the moment. Okay, and where is the debate the most vociferous? Where is the debate the most, ragged or tenuous and rabid? It's in the Western world, because the Western world has got the most to lose. So the whole idea, I guess, from a climate change debate is that we can't keep on using fossil fuels. And as I've just said when we started, I don't think we can keep on using fossil fuels, because I don't think there's enough to go around. Not cheaply. If you're prepared to pay, that's a whole nother matter. Now, with that, as you say, there's all this debate raging, about people wanting to keep status quo, and I can understand that. And there's all this debate raging about the fact that we should change. But it's really a very Western debate, because if you're living in the dirt in a third world country, you might have nothing else except aspiration of a first world lifestyle. If you're in an emerging economy, such as you might find in parts of India and China, you're on the cusp of being able to achieve that. Now, for those groups who probably make up the majority of people on Earth, they're aspiring. You know, I won't go into whether or not that's a good thing or bad thing, but the thing is that they don't have far to fall. The truth might be is that if we're all to share to make the world a better place and to really have equality, then, perhaps those of us that have been really enjoying in the West, some great luxuries through cheap energy might have to give some of that up. And nobody likes to fall. I mean, what would happen if we were all without our iPads and mobile phones?
Absolutely. But that just goes to show you just where the emphasis is for a lot of these people. I mentioned to you briefly before we started chatting, this is testament to the fact that I'm no businessman, but I can continue.
Not a bad one, though. You're pretty well clear.
but the idea of this pursuit of profit and growth in business, you get that, you go to, banks want to grow at a certain percentage every year. World growth is expected to be, at least 4% every year. Even if that wasn't an issue, as far as the finite resources that our planet has, the fact is that's not doable. There's going to be crashes, there's going to be whatever at certain points. And just as an example, I was at a party, and unfortunately I got stuck with someone who didn't understand that you don't talk about politics or religion or other things at a party. But anyway, we're starting to talk, and it was just after the election here in Australia, and he was vigorously advocating why he voted for a certain party, and it was because he thought everything should be run like a business, in his interests. It's all about the bottom line, making that extra money and growing. And the irony, of course, is that this same person said, but I guess if I was a school teacher or, an artist or something, I'd probably think differently. But then he didn't make that connection. I almost thought that, he might have had a bit of an epiphany there. But I think it's just a way of thinking. The status quo is not really going to do it going forward. And I think that's something that this article and these two guys were talking about on the ABC, was this idea that it's just going to hit a wall at some point. And what they were hoping will happen is that it's got to be a big enough shock for everyone to just sort of have the oh my God moment, but it can't be such a big shock that it destroys the planet. So do you think there's a reasonable chance of that happening?
Well, I don't think that will happen, but it's a really good point. We're all familiar with exponential growth. So just say doubling a number. And anyone can do this with a calculator, even one of your friends who love their business and finance. 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16, becomes 32, becomes 64, becomes 128, etc., etc., etc. You don't have to do that too long or know very much about the breeding of rabbits, perhaps, to know that at a point that the population becomes huge and is not sustainable. And, our real development of modern Western society has been tied to fossil fuel. And it's been the fact that we've always been able to produce more fossil fuel and create more or larger economies based on, dare I say it, really a little bit of wastefulness. I mean, whenever we need more of something in the Western world, we don't say, oh, is there another way? We just say, build another power plant, pump me some more oil. No one ever really sits down and says, oh, how can I make this more efficient as a first option? We've grown, this economy has grown on the basis that oil and fossil fuels are cheap and plentiful, which they have been, and they still are. But the demand for them is now exceeding supply, and I don't think anyone can deny that anymore. And that will happen as the population continues to grow, and more emerging economies move into aspirational, potentially first world style, living or wanting that. Costs will rise, and that there is where things will fall over. They'll fall over before we all die, that they might not fall over before we're all sorry that they didn't fall over sooner.
It almost seems like these emerging economies are going to have to almost, unfortunately, in a certain sense, take the lead in showing how the rest of the world, how it's going to be done, if that's the way they want to live it. If there's some way of creating a Western style lifestyle where you have all these things that people love and enjoy and about their lives and whatever, but they can do it in a renewable kind of way, a way of establishing an equilibrium with the environment, then that is something to aspire to. But it almost seems like with vested interests in a lot of Western countries, it's very difficult to see how that's going to happen.
Well, and the vested interests, let's face it, are in fossil fuel industries. I mean, and let's be honest about this. There's no way in the world that you can say that it's wrong for somebody in an emerging economy to look at a modern Western economy and say, I want that. They're quite entitled to do that. I mean, after all, that's what we do in the Western economy. But by the same token, sure, we may well have to shift to alternate forms of energy, but we just can't do it overnight. Look at your fossil fuel industries and how many people they employ. It's ridiculous that anyone should even, apart from the fact that the size of the engineering tasks to switch to alternate energies and be so large it'd take us 30 years to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But it's unreasonable to just say, well, hang up a close sign at the coal mine and, shut down all those oil rigs and all that sort of thing. I think, you can see we're going through a huge shift infrastructure-wise, it's not just the energy that we're using, it's also the way we're living. And they're the two big things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess just to wrap things up, where do you see all of this going in the short term? Do you think there's just going to be a lot more noise, a lot more? I don't know. I'm just kind of seeing a lot of brouhaha going along at the moment, and nothing seems to be getting resolved anywhere.
Well, I mean, it's quite obvious we're not going to get those fourth generation integral fast nuclear reactors. So there's not going to be plentiful power for everyone in the next 5 years. And I think what will happen is we'll see the cost of fuel rise. And, for some people in the West, it's going to be a very unpleasant experience. It won't be disastrous. It won't be awful. We're not all going to die. But the change will be forced on us, and that's simply because there's not enough fossil fuel to go around. So if you are in business or finance or you're an economist, I'd be hedging my bets on, alternate fuels.
And I guess some people are just going to have to learn that they have to think a little bit more than just about their, everyday cost of living and how, it's obviously, there's always cost of living pressures that have been going up. And it's by and large in relation to this sort of thing as well. So, it's a complex issue. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll see it out at some point.
Well, I think it's important that people realise that we're all in this together. So you might be a little bit better off financially than someone else, but you're only one rung higher on the ladder. And who knows, that rise in sea level will probably take everyone out.
Especially if you have a nice beachfront property somewhere.
Might be time to invest in the hills, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks again, Steve, for the chat. Always interesting. So, I guess what are we going to be doing next week? We'll have a bit of a chat later and see if we can work something out.
If anyone wants to continue the conversation, tweet us. I mean, we want to talk about this.
Absolutely. We appreciate any sort of point of view because it's such a big issue and it affects people in a lot of different ways. So thanks again for listening to us. We'll be back again next week. So until then, have a good week.